We're here with a band Metric who've just performed a great live session in LA, and we're here speaking with Emily Haines and James Shaw from the band, and they're here to give us a little insight into their world. So guys, what inspired each of you to begin playing music?
Well, so I think going back to the beginning of our careers and sort of what brought us all together and what started inspiring us as musicians and what created Metric was sort of a broad array of like where we came from. Like we actually had very, very differing inspirations and musical places that we came from. You know, I was a classical trumpet player. I went to all these classical music schools, and by the time I was 20, I kind of realized I didn't want to live in that world anymore, and that was boring me, and I didn't want to play the same pieces of music for the rest of my life and have to do it dictated to me by someone else and what they were happened to be feeling on that day. I wanted to always just do whatever I wanted to do musically. That's kind of where I came from. And
yeah, for me, I was coming from having a father who was this like unknown poet who did really cool. I mean, cool doesn't even really work as a word. Just kind of mind blowing work, in my opinion, with these great composers that came out of New York in the 70s and jazz musicians, mostly Carla Bley. He did Escalator Over the Hill, and which just growing up, I was like, that is a next level accomplishment. You know, it definitely made me set my standards for what I wanted to accomplish, like way higher than like pop princess or something, you know? So, and in fact, by my family's standards, I'm totally in a mainstream world that we never really existed in. But so it was really a cool connection with Jimmy because I was coming from, you know, like this really kind of abstracted idea of what music is. And he was coming from a really highly formal training. So I think it was a good, balance between the two of us.
And what is your writing process as a band, and how has it changed from over the years?
Our writing process has really taken on a few forms over the years. There's one of a few ways that it generally happens. And I think it happened mostly like this in the beginning, where Emily would come to me with a completed idea of a song, just sort of, the definite like beginning, middle, and ending. And then I would try and make it danceable and make it like full, like give it an arrangement and give it a context that it could exist within, the realm of rock and roll, as opposed to sort of just like your songs are very, very somber and very introspective and very, they were focusing on the more darker side of life and thoughts.
Yeah. And structurally also, I remember there being a lot of, everything was kind of in 6/8. Jimmy's like, all right, I feel you, but like there's never been a hit song that's not in 4. So, and we can actually get our music nerds lined up to discuss whether that's actually true. But, it's really an idea.
Start a forum on that one.
Yeah, exactly. But like, a good process for me of always feeling in my life that I'm looking for an editor, because I find that which I found in Jimmy and then later with Gavin on Fantasies, because I don't, when I edit myself, everything's gone. Like I'm really critical. So it's just like, I remember writing a whole piece and then just editing it to the point that it was gone. It's kind of a bummer. So for me, I feel really grateful that I have these people that I can be, ideally as open and as free as possible in my compositions, and then have people who respect my point of view but help me rein it in, and like almost like translators or interpreters for other people to understand that it's like, yeah, I love your 7-minute song with 3 time changes and your melodies that go wander and meander and lyrical references to things that nobody has any idea what you're talking about. I know where you're coming from. Let me help you portray that. So I couldn't do it with like a proper like producer, or I couldn't like have someone at a record label tell me to do that, because I would be too pissed off by that process. But having it be Jimmy and more recently Gavin I feel like I'm lucky to have those people.
Okay, great stuff. And how do you feel the balance of combining upbeat tempos with often austere lyrics?
Well, going back to that thing of like how we we combine these two different emotions of like ultra danceability and being able to just sort of not think and let go of all your thoughts and worries and everything, and at the same time really get into some heavy topics at this, is we always felt like the idea would be that if the music is on and you don't really want to get into anything heavy, then you really don't have to. And the minute that you want to open up your mind and start thinking about all the things that are going on in the world and in your life and in your other people's lives and, here on Earth in the 21st century, then it's all there. Like so you really, the idea behind that was that there's everything within the music, from like just the most shallow of moments where you get into the music and there's something that interests you, all the way down to the deepest of thoughts and everything that you could possibly want to internalize and feel and go through. It's all in there. It's good to have options.
It also comes from, that balance that we try to keep between the upbeat tempos and mood and the lyrical content being more serious. I don't know if anyone else has had this experience. I suspect they have, of like, you hear a song and you're like, it's really working for you. And then you hear the lyrics and you're like embarrassed that you liked it. So coming from being a massive music fan as well as a musician, I just felt like, God, I don't want anyone to ever feel that way with anything that we write, like that there's no throwaway lyrics. And I definitely did get that from my dad, because his poems would be like, some of them are 9 words long. And somehow, though, the way that he put them together, it's very much like a melody, actually, where it's just like, there's only so many notes in the scale. And yet those melodies that are, seared on our brains forever have something magical to them that I think language can do too.
Plug In, Plug Out shows how seamlessly your songs can go from the full loud experience to being completely stripped down and yet still be just as effective. What about your process? How does it lend itself to this transition back and forth?
Well, the acoustic thing, that came to some sort of fruition in Plug In, Plug Out, was really a concept that we adopted during the making of Fantasies, and it was something that Gavin, the guy that produced it with us, he would always say that if a song can't be played on an acoustic instrument, then there's probably an issue with the song itself. And so we developed this thing called the campfire test, and we used it as like a litmus test when you're in the studio. If the song's not doing something for you, or like there's always a moment in the song where like in the second verse you just get kind of bored, then like strip away the arrangement, turn off the computer and the console and everything, and like pick up an acoustic instrument and play the song. And if you're not bored there, then there's something wrong, and you start to like diagnose where something is going off, And I think that's just something that became really, really useful for us. And in retrospect, when that was happening, we were then I was looking back at the stuff that I didn't like about Live It Out and realizing that those were real song issues. Those were things where we were trying to cover up issues with, a crazy guitar tone or a filter sweep or something or other, or like, but you could never take some of those songs and just like play them on an instrument. And I think that's ultimately what I felt was left short in that record, and what I wanted to solve and really work on in Fantasies. Yeah.
And I think it's also that for my part, the songs do always start in a really organic, basic place. Like, Help I'm Alive stripped down is how Help I'm Alive started. And even though it took a long time in this whole circuitous route to get there, the guitar part was the same thing. It was just like me in my living room with an acoustic guitar, and then those things came together. So that's one that really naturally is suited to being stripped down. But I find it really cool with ones like Gold Guns Girls that Jimmy wrote as full arrangements, like these, which is normally his writing style as opposed to mine, right? As Jimmy will come to me with this like fully realized and sketched out song with all the parts and everything there except for the lyric and the melody. So I found it really cool when those were as easy to strip down as the ones that started on organic instruments.
Okay, so music is a deeply personal process that must connect to a large group of people on some level. Do you think about this as you write, or do you come from a totally personal perspective and hope that it resonates with someone outside of yourself?
Well, it's interesting, at least to me, and hopefully to listeners, but that, it's such a personal process making music. And at the same time, I find for the work that connects with me, there has to be some acknowledgement of the listener. Otherwise, it's like too much of a monologue or too much of a diary entry. And as much as I think, it's good for people to make music for therapeutic reasons, I'm, as an artist, I really am more interested in creating, art. So we could debate this forever, where that falls between therapy and whatever. But this is a hard question. I am as honest as I can be, but I also protect a certain amount of what I think is unnecessary to reveal, and generally adhere to a very self-critical and strict set of sort of rules about, like, what's interesting to your mom or what's interesting to your friends about you and the shades of your personality. It's not really the right content for the level of writing that I'm aspiring to, which I have not achieved. But, something I obey as a rule is things need to have multiple meanings. And so that it resonates, like the idea of a prism is actually the visual that I use a lot of, it has to be true in multiple ways. So it can be true. It's true for me and it's true for the listener in various ways. So I sound really kind of freaked out right now, but talking about writing is so wrong. And normally I would say, I'm not answering that question.
I mean, to me, I tend to believe, whether I'm right or wrong, I'm not sure really, that I really care, but I tend to believe that the most real and personal truths are also the most universal truths. And that really we're all human beings and we're pretty similar, regardless of where we came from or what we've been through or what we're going to go through or what we think about ourselves or what we think about the rest of the world. We all deal with a pretty basic range of human emotions. And the closer you get to who you actually are, the closer you get to everybody else. And I think that's really what we're trying to access.
I agree with that, but I also think it's in language, it's really tricky because it's true that those universal things are generally things that have already been said, but you can't, at least for me, I'm also not interested in just reverting to, a lot of what you hear on the radio or like, like the
yeah,
bulls.
Baby, don't hurt me no more. Like that's a pretty universal truth that's somehow not ringing that true to me and you. So
right. Well, I don't know. It's like the bullseye thing. It's just like for some people, they're not as interested in like a total bullseye, like obvious representation of a very understood concept. Like, I don't know. I think this is where you and I will always kind of differ, because I think for all the great songs, like Love Me Do, okay, sure. But there are so many other totally crap songs out there where people haven't tried to express things in a way that reflects their individuality or like, even attempts to like develop the basic emotion at all. So I feel like you can always use examples of really simple songs being great hits, but there are also so many like
and it wasn't,
cliches,
and it wasn't even so much about the idea that it becomes a hit. It's just what's effective, like I think for both of us, there was on the last Radiohead record, In Rainbows, there's that song, You Are All I Need.
Yeah.
And again, that's a totally basic emotion, You Are All I Need. But the way that he does it is very personal to him. It's not that he found this way of taking all of his personality out of it. It's that he puts 100% of his personality into it.
That's actually a great example.
That's why it becomes universal. Not because he's becoming everyone, but because he's becoming himself more than everybody else is.
Yeah, that's well put. And it's true. I remember looking at the song listings and being like, if you look up All I Need, there's 1,000, of people who've written that, but it's like nobody's written it like Radiohead. And that's I can agree with you on that one.